Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. We are going to go over the non-elected goofball that we've got for a prime minister, and this guy has got serious issues. You know what? Let's just cut right to it. It's pretty embarrassing.
Coming to terms with this sobering reality is the first step to taking necessary actions to defend our nation. But it's only the first step. Last night, the President of the United States reached out to schedule a call. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss how we can protect our workers and build our economies. I will make clear to the President that those interests are best served by cooperation and mutual respect, including of our sovereignty. Entre-temps,
Now,
je viens de tenir.
this is what the President knows. And this is why Carney has not been very eager to talk to him. Mark Carney's GFANS targeted in bombshell climate cartel report by U.S. Judiciary Committee. It's not just GFANS, it's everybody who's involved. So Mark Carney will more than likely be investigated and charged. I brought this to attention in previous videos. I urge you to like, share, and subscribe. And if you are, you probably saw it. If not, scroll down through my videos. You will find lots of breaking. I broke this a while ago. Now, the judiciary, I'm just going to read you a little bit of this. Climate control, exposing the decarbonization collusion in ESG investing. Reports target Mark Carney's GFANS among other climate finance collectives, says Friends of Science Society. Canada's greenwashing legislation in Bill C-59 seems to follow this playbook. So the bombshell is what it is. It's exposed massive financial and shareholder coercion in climate finance. So the climate cartel has declared war on the American way of life. The climate cartel is waging a global war, world war for net zero against disfavored American companies. This is in Canada as well. It's just we haven't got a government. Well, our government is implementing it. We got to get rid of these guys, and then we can charge them too, including those in the fossil fuel, aviation, farming industries that allow Americans to drive, fly, and eat. This goes so deep, exposing so much, and is welcomed, because the insanity of what they've been doing to us and our planet in order to make trillions of dollars in profit is ridiculous and disgusting. We're going to move on a little bit further here in this interview to, I guess we'll have to call this one Tweedledee because Trudeau's dumb. I don't know. Anyways.
Our biggest challenge as a country is becoming the most urgent. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we must fundamentally reimagine our economy. We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over.
Who gave you the right to say that? You do not open your mouth and say words that are going to have huge consequences. Now, I said this on a TikTok. If we don't get a supermajority with the Conservatives, the repercussions from what that man just said are going to destroy our nation. We're not just going to see Alberta separate. We are going to see a complete fall of Canada. That is the single largest wrong misdoing you could possibly want to say. I've been scrolling, waiting to see if Trump's had some type of retaliation on what he just commented. Now, personally, Trump doesn't really give a rat's ass about what our politicians up here say. That's been proven. He just goes off and he says whatever he wants. He doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. Because we're a joke. We're a joke of a democracy. We're a socialist country. And the majority of Canadians are just waking up to this. The problem is with our media, especially with this election coming, trying to protect all of the evils that these buggers have been doing, are not helping matters. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Get the word out. We've got to decapitate the media, people. It's the only way we're going to save this nation, and that's why I am probably my favorite thing about Poilievre is the fact that he's going to defund him. He's going to stop government paying media, and the dominoes will fall because people will then have the choice and see the reality of how they've been lied to and manipulated. Like the Globe and Mail running the hit pieces they're doing right now. They are complete and absolute lies. This whole Pierre not getting his security clearance, this is the biggest blasphemous lie out there. And they're just regurgitating it. Fear, hate, and division. It's all bullshit. I'm going to move on down to where he takes some questions. This man is scared shitless of Trump.
Hi, Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. Can you be more specific about what your counter plan is next week when the auto tariffs come in? Specifically, how much in terms of tariff measures you're going to take on what portion of American goods and what non-tariff measures you'll use?
So, thanks for the question. And it goes a bit back to the previous question, if I may just expand on my answer to that. This is a negotiation. It's in part a negotiation where we know certain things, and we know that there was going to be an initiative on automobiles. It was brought forward to yesterday. It was expected around the same time as the reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April. Those initiatives, just to be clear, apply to all countries in the world. Right? So it's not unique in and of versus Canada or versus Mexico. We have the best deal of a bad deal, is the way I would term it, within what the Americans have proposed.
No, we don't. That statement alone is completely ridiculous. Mexico has got a way better deal than we're going to get. At least Shannonbaum has reached out and has been talking, communicating. I've been looking. There's no she's not even discussing retaliatory tariffs. Instead, she's concentrating on other markets and being able to ship. And instead of poking the bear, she's going to keep doing what she's doing. Being democratic, reaching out, trying to negotiate a deal. It's not hard to do. But when you're a criminal, or soon to be criminal, a crooked banker, it's a little hard to do. And when his predecessor was the most hated man on the world stage, especially in Trump's eyes, we're in big trouble. And then you have Doug Ford, who totally, the damage he has caused to Ontario makes me sick. I feel so sorry for Ontario, especially since he just gave this piece of crap a 4-year mandate with a majority government. You can say goodbye to the revenue of shipping electricity down to the States. Trump is already in the means of trying to hook up lines and max power out in other generating stations, in other plants, to start feeding all the areas that Doug Ford in Quebec once fed. That's all on you, Dougie. Dougie. You're not your brother. That's for sure. You're an idiot. I'm going to move ahead because this guy's just a dork. Listen to some of these answers.
President Trump today warned Canada about responding and retaliating, warning that he will escalate his response against Canada, and your minister, Mr. LeBlanc, has spoken to Mr. Lutnick. What message then are you taking from that, and are you prepared to bear the brunt of that escalation threat from Mr. Trump? How much pain can Canada take?
Well, look, our responsibility, my responsibility, Minister LeBlanc, Minister Champagne, Mr. Joly, the Cabinet, the government, our responsibility is to Canada and is to get the result for Canada. So our response will be calibrated in order to achieve that. We choose our own allies in Canada. We choose how we engage those allies. We are sovereign. So I take note of the President's comment. I don't take direction from it.
Next question. Hi, Hannah Berge, CTV News. Will you or any cabinet officials be heading to Washington to meet with the U.S. administration?
It's possible that some cabinet officials will. I think, given the timelines,
Are you serious? This man's been avoiding Trump like the plague. First thing he does is he flies off to Europe and tries to get us hooked up with the EU. The dumbest possible thing. I swear to God, you can't be any dumber than that. But he's doing it because he's trying to save himself and his billionaire and trillionaire companies and buddies. Because the house of cards is falling, people. And we've been drug into this for 9 years. We are America's biggest enemy. And the worst part is as Canadian citizens, we are our own worst enemy for allowing this to go on for as long as it has. Absolute imbecile. When the clowns of the circus elect a leader, you get a Carney. And welcome to Carnival Land. What a... Ugh.
the President and I will speak, as I mentioned. I look forward to the discussion. We'll see where we go from there.
Follow-up?
And just to follow up on Tonda's question, what do you think about President Trump threatening Canada with more tariffs if Canada works with the EU on countermeasures? Well,
look, we're a sovereign nation. We take our own decisions. I take note of his comments, nothing more.
See?
Next question. Mr. Carney, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. The last time Premier Ford put electricity tariffs going to the States, there was quite a reaction.
See the smile? You see the smile? We're screwed, man. If this guy gets elected, we're screwed. If we don't get a supermajority with Poilievre, we're done for. I'm telling you, there's no good outcome from any of this. It's going to take so much to fix what this idiot has done, let alone the 9.5 years of destruction that Canada at one time, at least through the polls, was showing we were going to actually pull ourselves out of this. And now, I don't know. Like I said, I still think Poilievre's going to win. I just don't think he's going to get the supermajority that we need in order to start charging these people, in order to start opening up all the bricks that have been mortared in front of us for the last 9.5 years. We have zero transparency in our government. And every time that we get a little bit of a hole in there and we look through, all we see is corruption and scandals. This guy's an idiot. He cuts the power off down there. Look out. I've said it before. It's an actual act of war. It is an act of war. And I think that's what Trump told Dougie. Do you really want our military up there? Because if you cause any harm to an American citizen on purpose, that is an act of war. It's not like just a Canadian citizen going down there robbing somebody and killing someone. That's different. When the government of a nation purposely causes damage, especially death, on American soil, that is an act of war. Look at the evil eyes. That's also a scared grin. I think he's smiling to cover up the fact that he just urinated himself. He just shit himself.
From President Trump, when you're considering what the retaliatory tariffs that you bring in the future, is there a consideration to put retaliatory or export taxes on Canadian energy going to the U.S.?
Look, we have many options, and we will use them judiciously.
And so on oil and gas, that is an option that you're considering putting an export tax on?
Look, yeah, as I said a moment ago
See how quick it was to
Ms.
cover?
Charles, it's a negotiation. You don't, you act when you act. You don't pre-commit.
Thank you. Next question.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Carney.
Absolute bozo. If he even tries to touch, like if he tries to force any type of tariffs on the oil and gas, that's done. Alberta drops the writ. Or not the writ, they're going to have a referendum on separation. There's already a mass migration going to Alberta. They have the largest influx of Canadians leaving their provinces to go to Alberta. And this has just skyrocketed because people know their provinces are lost. When you have provinces that have been Liberal or NDP for that long, done. They know there's no hope of saving them. So they're best off being somewhere where they can work, pay less taxes, and possibly have the chance to save themselves and become their own country. Idiots. Surrounded by idiots. Unbelievable.
Madame. It's important to have a strong and clear mandate coming out of this election, given the seriousness of the situation in autos, in forestry, in aluminum, and semiconductors, across a range of industries. We haven't seen, this is the biggest, if I didn't say this exactly, but I'll resume, the biggest crisis in our lifetimes. And the government is going...
I thought the Wuhan was. These guys will do and say anything to scare people. Fear, hate, and division. Fear, hate, and division. Yes, this is not good. The tariffs are not good, especially on our auto sector. We've had 100 years to try and deal with this, to build better. And our government has shut down anybody who tries to go against the heavy hitter corporations. If it isn't the Laurentian elite, it's the other elite. And now they're bought out by the WEF and the carbon elite. Canada, we got to free our chains. We have to release ourselves. Excuse me. We have to realize change is not to be afraid of. It's good. Like the fact that we still appoint judges. Hello? The fact that we still appoint senators. Hello? What do you think's going to happen when Poilievre tries passing anything through that house? When you've got 90% of them that are complete left-wing lunatics. We are in big trouble.
Going to need to act, and the stronger the mandate is, the more effective we are going to be getting the best deal for Canada with respect to the Americans. Madame.
Suivante question.
Yeah. That's why I'm praying. I'm praying we get a conservative majority. We need it. We need it. We need it really badly. I'm going to scoot ahead. Check out the end of this presser. Again, zero transparency and afraid to take real questions.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes today's press conference.
Thank you. I think, in fairness to the others, that's probably the end, right?
In
Thank you very
fairness
much.
to the others.
Merci beaucoup.
How is that fair to the others? So you take puff questions from your right-wing or your right arm, the propaganda machine. Everybody else, forget it. No real questions, not talking about it. Unbelievable. But there is good news. Coming from Mo.
Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome here this morning. Effective on April 1st, 2025, Saskatchewan will now be a carbon tax-free province, the first carbon tax-free province in the nation of Canada.
There you go, Saskatchewanites. You will be the first to start saving money. Would have been nice if this would have happened earlier, if Jagmeet wouldn't have, backed up the Liberals as long as he did, because then we would have been able to save thousands of dollars on the heating. But better late than never. Congratulations, Saskatchewan. Your premier actually did something right. Mo.
You've heard us say many times before over the last number of years that Saskatchewan is the home to some of the most sustainable products that you can find on Earth. We have in our province the most sustainable oil and gas industry in the world. We have a net zero oil company operating here in Saskatchewan, which we had the opportunity to highlight many times. I'm aware of no other net zero oil company operating anywhere across North America or anywhere on Earth for that matter. Our methane emissions in the oil and gas sector have dropped some 72% since 2015. I'm not aware of another industry globally that has a record of dropping their methane emissions by some 72% just in the last decade. Potash, 35% of the world's potash comes from this province, and it's produced with half of the emissions of our next largest competitors in other areas of the world. We also produce about 15 to 20% of the world's uranium, high-grade uranium, high-quality uranium to be used in clean nuclear power in many other countries around the world, including Canada and the United States of America. And we want to produce more of that product as we have a number of additional uranium mines that are going through and waiting for their federal regulatory approval so that they can begin construction sooner rather than later. We have a net zero copper mine that is under construction to provide minerals or elements not only of today, but elements that are crucial to powering our future right here in our province. I would say you point back to the opportunity we had at COP28 in Dubai to highlight not only all of these industries, but to highlight the industry that really is the spinal cord of the economy in Saskatchewan, and that is our agricultural industry, where the Global Institute for Food Security released a study that pointed towards the comparison of how our agri-food products are produced in Saskatchewan relative to our next 6 or 7 largest competitors globally. And what they found was our canola and our wheat are produced with a 65% lower carbon content than the next largest 7 competitors around the world. Peas and lentils were off the charts with respect to just how sustainably produced they were here in Saskatchewan, and by extending the technology and the innovation that we're using to other areas in North America and other areas of the world, we are producing more sustainable food due to the efforts of Saskatchewan companies. So as Canadians, where do we find ourselves today? As Canadians, we find ourselves in the midst of a federal election campaign. And given that the 2 major federal parties and their leaders have realized the very harmful impacts of the carbon tax, the harmful impact to families, to our investment environment, industrial investment environment, and ultimately the harmful impact in reducing the number of jobs and opportunities that Canadians have, and more generally, the harmful impact that it has to our economic growth in not just this province, but across the nation of Canada, we see each of those leaders now announcing plans to eliminate at least some of the cost of the carbon taxation policy that we've been subjected to for which will be 6 years, this April the 1st. So in that light, and taking that cue from the federal leadership candidates, Saskatchewan is taking the lead in our nation by reducing the industrial carbon tax rate charged in our province to 0. The industrial carbon tax rate, or the OBPS, is the quiet carbon tax. It's the carbon tax that we as Canadians don't always see, but we certainly all pay. We're in a very uncertain time as well.
So this is actually a really smart move. Now, we know Carney, if he wins, loves the shadow tax. He's going to up it. So we're going to see, in Saskatchewan, they're going to see a huge dip in prices. That way, if the Liberals win and they keep the hidden shadow tax and force Saskatchewan to have to put it back in again, the huge spike in cost is going to be visual, and it brings it back into the media spectrum. There's no way mainstream will be able to hide that. Very well done. This man, I think, has just learned his first game of chess. Mo.
As Canadians, we are facing as Canadians potential tariffs and some implemented tariffs in the steel and aluminum industry already today from our largest trading partner, the United States of America. We also in this province and throughout the Midwest, the prairie provinces are facing today the 100% tariff on canola and peas and pork and seafood in our Atlantic areas, the Chinese tariff that's been imposed due to a policy decision, in fairness, by our federal Liberal and supported by the NDP governments, a policy decision to protect the EV industry, the Canadian EV industry, which is at this point in time not employing anywhere near the number of people that are being employed in the canola industry and the other aforementioned industry. So what we are doing as a province is we're taking very decisive steps to ensure that our industries in Saskatchewan are more competitive and to protect the jobs today in those industries and protect the jobs that we want to attract in those industries into the future. And most importantly, protecting Saskatchewan families from inflationary costs due to unnecessary taxation.
Well done, Mo. Well done. About time this guy, his left nut finally fell, people. Finally fell. We're going to move on to the best premier in Canada.
Premier has a statement to make.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When U.S. President Donald Trump first announced his threatened tariffs against Canada and began musing about our country becoming the 51st state, many Canadians and Albertans feared for their futures. And why? Because regardless of our political stripe, we all knew that the imposition of 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods to the U.S. would cost the jobs of hundreds of thousands of Canadians, would depress our economy, devastate our budget, and damage the sovereignty of our country. And in the roughly 4 months until just before last weekend's federal election call, premiers, party leaders, and Canadians were united, other than perhaps the Alberta NDP, in working as hard as we could to convince the U.S. President and Congress to reconsider these unjustified actions against our country. In fact, premiers were all encouraged by each other, as well as by the former Prime Minister and his ministers, to visit the U.S., to get on U.S. media, to speak with every U.S. official and influencer we could to convince the U.S. President to refrain from imposing these tariffs. It was all about working as Team Canada for the greater good. Enter Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now all of a sudden, it's apparently treason to talk to American media personalities that we disagree with. It is disloyal to try and persuade high-profile Republicans holding influence with the President to abandon his tariff policies on Canada. Indeed, it's a high crime to try and convince U.S. officials to refrain from imposing tariffs until after our country has elected a leader with a strong mandate. Shame on all who dare to speak with the enemy, they now say. These are the Team Carney and NDP talking points. Their endgame is quite obvious. Frighten and divide Canadians. Try and make Canadians forget the utter incompetence of Liberal and NDP policies that have been inflicted on this country over the last 10 years. Associate Conservatives with President Trump. And if they play their cards just right and sprinkle in just enough anti-Alberta rhetoric, presto, Canada might elect another Liberal majority government. Well, the Carney Liberals and the Nenshi NDP are right about one thing. Our country is indeed vulnerable right now. And the reason why is as clear as a sunny Alberta day. It is because for the last 10 years, Liberal and NDP leaders across this country, both federal and provincial, have repeatedly sold out Canada and Alberta with policies that have landlocked our immense natural resources, made nation-building projects practically impossible to finance and build, and have made securing access to our ports an exercise in frustration and futility. These Liberal and NDP leaders, from Trudeau to Singh and now to Prime Minister Mark Carney, have done everything in their power to sow investment uncertainty, to add impossibly high costs on the development of our resources, and have disastrously weakened our security and military, all in the name of their green extremist religion and its cult leaders named Guilbeault, Suzuki, Gore, and Thunberg.
Right on.
And the results are obvious. Canadians are poorer than Americans, overly dependent on the Americans, and vulnerable to many nations, including the Americans. Canada has indeed been sold out, big time, and it's been sold out by the utter incompetent, self-righteous and extreme policies of Liberal and NDP leadership across this country, including the Nenshi NDP right here in Alberta. From C-69 to oil and gas production caps to tanker bans to a dozen other examples, the Liberals and their allies have attacked the Alberta and Saskatchewan economies mercilessly. And despite all that, despite the 10-year attack on Alberta by our own federal government, where tariffs were threatened on tariffs were threatened on our fellow Canadians, and the federal Liberals realized they had no contacts or allies anywhere in the new U.S. administration, what did the Alberta government do? Did we cower in the corner, madly texting our tweets about hating Donald Trump on X? Did we turn into part-time TikTok rage farmers to stir up as much fear and loathing of Americans as humanly possible? Did we give up, throw our hands in the air, express righteous indignation, but do nothing to fight against the threat imposed on our province and country? No, that's what the Nenshi NDP did, of course, but we, Alberta's UCP government, we did not. Instead, our government did exactly what Albertans expected us to do. We decided to fight tooth and nail for Albertan and Canadian jobs and sovereignty. My ministers, officials and I have spent hundreds of hours over the last several months talking with, lobbying, educating and persuading every U.S. lawmaker and media influencer that was willing to listen about how damaging and wrong-headed imposing tariffs on Canada would be for Americans and for the millions of American jobs that would be lost because of them. I've made this case repeatedly to the American people and their leaders, especially Republican leaders, from the U.S. President personally to members of his cabinet, to senators, to governors, to members of Congress, to podcasters, to media personalities. I've lost track of how many nights I've spent in uncomfortable hotel beds and airports doing everything humanly possible to stand up for Canadian and Alberta workers and families, convincing U.S. officials to refrain from putting tariffs on any Canadian goods, asking that they respect the current free trade agreement and not begin renegotiations until Canadians elect a new Prime Minister with a strong 4-year mandate, doing all we could in Alberta to secure the U.S. border and urging the Liberals to do the same across the country so that we could further delay the implementation of tariffs. And it hasn't just been Alberta. Several other premiers, particularly Conservative premiers, Premier Scott Moe, Premier Tim Houston, Premier Doug Ford, have been doing the exact same thing. And the results, it has been almost 4 months since the President first threatened tariffs on Canada, and although steel and aluminum are wrongfully being tariffed at this time, the tariffs on remaining Canadian goods sits at 0 today, rather than 25%. And what has the Nenshi NDP done to contribute to this effort? Not a single thing, other than raging against this government for every effort we have taken to protect Albertans. Needless to say, there is not a doubt in my mind that had the Nenshi NDP been in charge during this period, we would likely have long ago been hit with across-the-board 25% tariffs and lost thousands of Alberta jobs already. Because the NDP have no idea what diplomacy is, as they don't know how to talk constructively or effectively with anyone they disagree with. And glad we never need to find out. Our government's advocacy has made a massive difference for Albertans and for Canadians, and that is a fact. But now, we have another tariff deadline looming on April the 2nd, and I am now off to the U.S. yet again to try and speak to Americans, this time through the second largest podcaster in the world, whose audience is made up of exactly the people we need to persuade to convince their president to change course on tariffs against Canada. And what does Team Carney want me to do? They want me to abandon my post, remain in Alberta, and do absolutely nothing to defend our province. They want me to cower in the face of Eastern media pundits and politicians who favour political grandstanding to effective diplomacy. I'm fiercely criticized for going into the lion's den to change the hearts and minds of the very Americans that we need on Canada's side to avoid a trade war with the most powerful economy on earth. They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here is my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent. We will not be pushed around and called traitors for merely having the courage to actually do something about our nation's and province's predicament other than merely indulging in self-righteous tantrums. And I, for one, will never be silenced by the party in Ottawa that has sold out our beloved province for the last 10 years with the help of their NDP collaborators. I have and I always will put Albertans first. And until this danger to Alberta and our economy is past, They're going to have to roll me off in a stretcher before I will stop fighting for our province and our people. So they can call me and my caucus, whatever name in the dictionary they want. As long as Albertans know that we are fighting for them and their families, we could care less what the members opposite or Liberal politicians in Ottawa have to say about us, because Albertans expect their Premier and government to always put Albertans first and lead them through this storm with fearless determination. As Winston Churchill once said, fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. We, on this side of the House, have made the decision to act with courage so that Alberta may remain forever strong and free.
Wow. That was an amazing speech. Absolutely amazing. You heard it from the best premier in Canada. The last thing the Liberals actually want is to have a strong female leader. It goes against everything they are. They like to grandstand about it, but by the last leadership race where Carney got appointed, a non-elected official, beat out 2 women, they had to kick the third one out? Come on. Really? Alberta, way to go. Way to go, guys. You voted in an amazing human being. A true Canadian. A true Canadian. Every time I hear her talk, I'm blown away. Her political prowess, her demeanor, her strength, but yet kindness and devotion. She was looking out for all of Canada the whole time, knowing the weight on her shoulders of of succession, of separation. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, you guys, I'm going to call that an episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to punch that notification bell. It not only helps me grow the channel, you will get notified every time I put out a new episode. And from this little outlet, I surprise people all the time, working on a lot of big stuff. Until next time, guys, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Alias to Guy.